Welcome to another episode of the Career Keynotes podcast with Tincup and Gardiner, where William and Andrew chop it up with respected Silicon Valley talent acquisition and HR leaders to get the real story behind their career journeys, along with an insider's view of how companies engage with candidates. Let's face it, these days, finding the job, much less nailing down an interview, is not easy. This is a rare opportunity to learn firsthand what companies are looking for in a candidate and the best ways to engage with them. And now, here are William and Andrew.
Okay, hi everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Career Keynotes with Tincup and Gardiner. I'm very excited about today's guest and today's episode. And so without further ado, I'll introduce you. This is my friend Jubal, and Jubal very graciously agreed to pinch hit at the last minute, and he's been on my list, and I'm super excited to have Jubal join the show. So welcome to the show, Jubal.
Yeah, it's good to be here with you guys. Glad to know I was your second choice.
You're on the short list. I say that to everybody, but I only mean it when I'm talking to a handful of people. Okay, so listen, I typically go on this big rant about how smart the guests are and how experienced and capable. And rather than me do that, would you mind taking 2 minutes and just explaining to the guests who you are and what you do?
So awesome to be here. Thanks y'all for having me. Real privilege and honor. So right now I'm looking after employer brand for Splunk, which is a big data company headquartered in San Francisco. We've got about 6,000 employees worldwide. 91 of the Fortune 100 are customers. Check us out at splunk.com. Prior to that, so I've been at Splunk for about 3.5 years. Prior to that, I was the talent community manager at Workday for about 4 years. That was kind of my first foray into the Bay Area market. Before that, I was a Microsoft guy for 4 or 5 years. Did a little job board startup in between stints at Microsoft. Came up as a sourcer. I'm a Seattle guy. I started out sourcing up in Seattle in about 99, not to date myself, but moved to Portland where I live now in 2000, did the agency thing for 3 or 4 years. And then started contract recruiting on the corporate side. So Bearing Point, Intel, Microsoft, and then I kind of bookended those two things, but took a couple breaks in between. My wife's a recruiter, so luckily in our business, maybe not right now, but when things are good, you can kind of take a break, and the other person can kind of step in, find a contract, find a gig. So that's kind of how we've always done it. I don't know. Started as an agency guy, sourcer, and then moved over to the talent community and then employer brand stuff.
I love it. I love it. First of all, I just love all of the whole arc, the whole part of your history. Seattle's got such a great talent community, and so does Portland, but it's different. The question I'd like to ask first is, as you look backwards, is there a mentor or maybe a model, someone you looked at through your career where you're like, I want to be like that person, or I want to model some of my behaviors or activities after that person?
Yeah, no, good question. Wow. I think, Grant Bassett, who I work for now, and I followed him from Workday to Splunk. He's taught me a lot just about executive communications, internal communications, simplicity, forecasting, big picture thinking, things like that. I mean, Grant's like a big brother to me. Love that guy to death. You know, Glenn Cathy. I mean, I always liked the way that he packaged his sourcing material and the way that he made it consumable,
Yeah.
and just the cadence and the frequency where he was always pushing out new things. Jer Langhans has done some awesome stuff. Brian Cheney.
Yep.
Love the work that he does.
Yeah.
Around brand. Yeah, man. I mean, Jeremy Roberts. I mean, just a lot of people that just kind of like, I feel like all those people I mentioned don't overcomplicate things.
Right.
They keep it simple, make it consumable, and make it like programmatic where, you know, what's the goal? What are 3 things we can do to get from where we are now to get to where we want to do? I feel like they all, and that's what I've sort of tried to. Joie Einstein, who I'm not sure if you know, she runs TA Ops at Tableau.
Oh, cool.
We cross paths at Workday, and just this has always stuck with me. But one of the things she said is, what are the 3 programs you're working on right now? Right. I mean, it's there's so many variables in recruiting with candidates and hiring managers and tools and media and all of that. But if you can focus on like a quarterly basis, like what are your 3 things you want to accomplish? And if you cross those off the list, it's a win. If you get to more than that, fantastic. But that's the way she thinks of things. And again, she's got that TA ops mindset, but she's also a great marketer and brand person. I feel like that really sort of got me from trying to boil the ocean to, you know, focusing on, you know, quarterly accomplishments, I guess. But yeah, she's somebody that you guys should look up. She's sharp. She's up in Seatown.
So Jubal, I want to take a step back, and again, I'm very excited to have you on the show. And as I mentioned to you earlier, one of the reasons or the purposes of the show is to give people insight and perspective on how companies engage with candidates. What are their strategies? What are their tactics? What are they doing? What are they thinking? And so just to be perfectly clear, so the listeners know, that's one of the things I admire most about you and the work that you do. You are responsible for helping companies figure out tactically the best ways to engage or source candidates. What's the word? Nurture that relationship so that if and when they are ready to make a career change, you're there ready and willing to, flip that switch, and it's timing. And oh, by the way, many of the people that your companies or your employers or that you're charged with sourcing aren't looking, which makes what you do that much more impressive and interesting. So based on that context, what are some of the things that you do? I mean, I know what you do. I mean, I kind of do. I don't really know how you do it, but what are some of the things that you do? What are some really interesting kind of key takeaways that to the untrained eye, if I had a chance to ask the expert, which is what I'm doing right now, what are some things that you think you do or that you focus on that could enlighten someone that's trying to get in? And we're going to bounce around a little bit. We'll get back to the how did you get to be where you are and why. But what are some things that you think are not trade secrets, but that would just boy, because every time I talk to you, I go, God, how does he know that? Or how does he do that? That's indecently brilliant. And for you, it's just blocking and tackling. So what are some things that you think would benefit the average person that's either new to the job market or wants to change careers and is maybe struggling because of COVID, or just in general doesn't really understand and isn't having any success in that endeavor?
So you mean like people that are looking for jobs right now, like what's going on behind the scenes so they can be more attractive to companies and recruiters?
Be more attractive, but also just be more educated. Like it's a lot of times it's just a big black box. I send my resume in and I never hear anything, or and that's a hyperbolic example, but yeah, anything, any kind of
Yeah.
insight or perspective, because I think there's a lot of stuff that you do that people would be fascinated to hear about.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate you saying that, first of all. I think, the number one thing is that, and I'm not sure how antiquated this is, but, for the past 15 years or so, it seems like recruiters have looked at candidates in terms of either active talent or passive talent. Active talent are the people that are applying for jobs on Indeed or Glassdoor or the company career site. They're actively looking. Passive talent are the ones that have a LinkedIn profile or, a GitHub profile or a resume out there somewhere that recruiters or sourcers who are, in talent acquisition, there's a role called a sourcer. And I don't know if everybody knows this, but their whole job is to go out and find that passive talent. And so if you look at, first I'll talk about active talent, how to be noticed. So if you're looking for a job, of course you've got to apply, right? I mean, a lot of time it's a compliance requirement. Like you've got to literally fill out the application before anyone can really talk to you or advance advance you in the process. I think I guess my key tips would be to research the company, research the role, and then optimize your LinkedIn profile and your resume so it really speaks to those roles. A lot of the software that recruiters use has algorithms that kind of stack rank applicants based on keywords. So, search engine optimization, SEO. I think everybody kind of knows what that is now, but imagine if you were making a website and you were trying to sell, shoes in Portland or something like that. That website would be stuffed with keywords and images and different phrase combinations. So on Google, when somebody's looking for shoes in Portland, that would pop up. You should do the same thing with your LinkedIn profile, and you should do the same thing with your resume, because a lot of the software that recruiters use, that's kind of how the algorithm works. And I'm oversimplifying it. There's more, around that, education requirements, degree, years of experience, things like that. But I think that really taking that extra half hour, an hour before you click submit to tweak your content is not going to hurt. Doing your research and understanding what the company does and how your skills are relevant. And cover letters are kind of passe now. I kind of think that the email you send is your cover letter and the resume is the attachment. If you're not applying online or if you're following up with an email, talk about precisely how your experience relates to exactly the mission of this company and how you can make a quantifiable contribution, day one, essentially, or, after your first 90 days, in two paragraphs. Look at who at the company, let them know you applied, ask them if they can, have an informational interview. Talk to people who have worked at the company and have left because they know people there, right? It's about getting that inside kind of track and getting that referral. A lot of companies hire 30, 40, 50% of all of their hires based on referrals. It's not what you know, it's who you know, right? I mean, that still holds up. So it's being really purposeful with LinkedIn and going beyond finding a job and clicking submit, but going one level deeper, 2 levels deeper, peeling the onion back, going on LinkedIn groups, Facebook, finding people that work at Splunk there that might be first, second, third degree connections, hitting them up. Hey, I just applied for this role. What do you think? Could we chat? Could I pick your brain? Something like that. You've got to be aggressive. Number one, right? When jobs are getting 1, 2, 3, 400 applicants, in tech with really precise, concise requirements, you've got to do something to you got to do everything to make yourself stand out. If they hold events, if they hold podcasts, if they hold, watch it, comment on it, set up a Google News alert, follow what's going on, connect with those people that are highlighted. You know what I mean? And it doesn't have to be like, the other side of the coin is like, for recruiters, when we find a candidate we really want to hire, we can't just be like, I have a job for you right now. Like, come work here. Cause they're not going to always respond. Like, they're happy where they're at. It's about building that rapport, that relationship. The same thing for candidates. Like, if you really want to work at a company, like, network with as many people there as you can. Twitter, you know what I mean? Like, all of that. The other side of it, the passive candidates, if you're happy where you're at, you've got a good gig, you're getting paid, like all of that. It's always good to have people like coming to you, and so you can automatically basically see what else is out there. Same thing, optimize your profile, be active on forums, contribute, network. So yeah. And I think the other thing too is like, after you apply, find out who the recruiter is or hiring managers. Like, be aggressive, be purposeful, drive it like you stole it, so to speak. Like, go after it. You know what I mean? Like, if you're serious about it, you're going to stand out more than, you got to be qualified, right? Like, this isn't like the magic silver bullet, but, you've got to do something to make yourself stand out. And if it's not for this role, then you'll be on the radar. You'll have this network. It's not like it just vanishes after this thing disappears. You'll be like top of mind for the next thing. It's about pervasiveness, like being top of mind. It's the same thing I do as a recruitment marketing professional. I want to be top of mind for when people have that compelling event in their life, even if they're happy, when they're ready to jump someplace, they're looking for a new gig. I want them to think of Splunk first. Should be the same thing. When a new role opens up at this company you're pursuing, they should think of you first.
I love it. I'm going to ask you a toughest assignment question about your career, and you've got probably 1,000 of these, but I'll give you an example. 2 years ago, a buddy of mine was at Wayfair, and he ran sourcing there. And they told him going into 19, he had to source 1,000 software engineers.
That's it.
So he called me. He called me, not in a panic. He called me and he said, I've been given, this task. Now I have money and, all this other stuff, but I've been given this task. I don't even know how to start to think about it. Can we just brainstorm?
Mm-hmm.
So with your career, and again, anywhere at any stage, what's been the toughest assignment for you so far?
Good question.
I don't know, man. It's like you said. I mean, nothing's ever easy. Probably this podcast.
Come on, dude.
No.
Yeah, softballs.
Yeah. No, that's a great question. No, I love it. I mean, geez, it's like, if you would have asked me that when I was 3 years in, it'd probably be easier to kind of go through the mental register. But I don't know about anything like that about hiring volume, because that's kind of what I do now.
Right.
But I can tell you about when I was at Microsoft. I was a sourcer, and the recruiter that I was partnered with, I think she either got moved to a new team temporarily, or it might have been like a paternity leave situation or something. I can't totally recall. But this was in the days of, so this was before Bing. This was live. Mm-hmm. And we were looking to build out like their SEO team. So do you remember the name Matt Cutts? That was the like SEO evangelist for Google.
Yeah.
We were looking for the Matt Cutts equivalent at Live. This is probably 2009, 2010.
Right.
And I'm a sourcer, so like full desk recruiting, I've, done it, but it'd been a while. And the reason I'm telling this story is because it was one of my greatest successes. So I'm doing it because it's one of the ones I remember. I think I blocked out the hard and bad stuff. But I started to look around. I did, of course, there's LinkedIn Recruiter then, right? 2009? Yeah.
Oh yeah.
So I did all that. And then I started to sort of get a little deeper, and I reached out to, so there was a forum, the Search Engine Marketing Professionals Organization, SEMPO. I reached out to the chair of that. And I said, hey man, Dwayne Forrester. I said, I'm looking for the Matt Cutts of live, essentially. Like, help me navigate this. Like, this environment and this ecosystem better than I do. And he replied and he said, I think I'd be interested in that. and we hired, and he was in Nova Scotia, and he was like he's like my favorite candidate of all time too. I mean, such an awesome dude. He was in Nova Scotia, hire him not on the spot, but I mean, he went through the process and was like a runaway hire. And then he had to, relocate and all of that. And then he was in that role for, I don't know, 3, 4, 5 years. And wow. Yeah. And he's, gone on to do other stuff. He gave me a signed copy of his book as a thank you. We went out to dinner, but to me, that's like what I do is, I think it's not different. Like the good sourcers do that, right? Like you kind of like navigate the ecosystem, the community and things like that. But that was a big one for me because it started with like a Google search, like search SEO communities. And it was the first one. And luckily it worked out. Right. But yeah, I don't know if that answers your question, if you're looking for something different.
Indeed. It does indeed. Yeah. Before Andrew, did you, Microsoft's the big place. Did you ever run across a guy, Jason Pankow?
Oh man, it sounds familiar.
He was on the Xbox side, and he started in sourcing, but then got into recruiting. But if you'd have known him, you'd have known him because he wrote for Fistful of Talent for a while.
That's probably where I know his name from. I don't know if I knew it. Microsoft's a huge place, but
turns out.
Yeah. So I was there for 2008 to 2010. Left, actually 2006 to 2008. Left when my son was born. Kind of did the flip flop with my wife for a little bit, and that was in I think it was called like online systems group. So it was like live ad center. I don't know, man. I'm butchering all this Microsoft products, which was like kind of the AdWords clone, a few other things, MSN, of course. I took like 2 years off and then went back, and I was the first sourcer in Azure, which is their cloud, platform. So I've had 2 stints there. Love Microsoft, love it. And it's funny because I'm a Seattle guy, but I worked there when I was in Portland, so I was always remote. So that was like my chance to go up there and sort of, breathe in the fresh air and see my buddies and all that. So, but yeah, lots of smart people at Microsoft. But I mean, the recruiting and sourcing talent is like off the charts for sure.
So Jubal, just to take a step back, I often say to people, there's a handful of people that graduate from college or embark on their professional career search, and they have a really good idea of what they want to do, doctor, policeman, astronaut. I'm curious, what can you give the listeners some insight into your career trajectory and any kind of mile markers of significance or import that come to mind as you, and again, you don't have to go blow it like it, not a cold and windy day kind of thing, but just some of the highlights or lowlights as you got to where you are.
Well, it was September of 2001. No, like I was telling you guys before, my parents were both employer brand people for big data companies in Silicon Valley in 1975 when I was born, and I just kind of took the mantle and ran with it. So no. I was a communications major, public relations major at a state school. Graduated in 99, which was when the .com boom was still, heading upwards. My first job was at Pike Place Fish in Seattle, where they throw the fish. You've probably seen it during Seahawks games. And
Pike Place?
yeah, worked there for the summer. But I didn't really, I had decent grades, but didn't do any internships or anything like that. Like I didn't want to be like a finance guy or, anything like that. Marketing's always been kind of close to my heart. I think, I like to write. A friend of mine from WSU got a job at a temp agency. It's called Aerotech at the time. What are they called now?
Aerotech.
Well, no, it's where Matt Charney.
It's Allegis.
Allegis.
Oh wow! Well,
is he still there? I don't know if I should name drop.
He's in technology. Craig Fisher left, and he's the CEO of a startup. And Matt stayed with Allegis, but moved over to their technology division. And so he's like running product strategy and things like that. But the Allegis group is $16 billion staffing, RPO.
Yeah.
Blah 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 blah.
I would put
one of those.
I would put both of those guys too in that list where you asked kind of who influences me. I mean, those guys are cool, and we've hung out at like SourceCon and stuff, and it's just good dude. Like, I mean, I feel like I'd be friends with them and drink a beer. I mean, you guys probably hang with them more than I do, but
they both live about 20 minutes from me.
Oh, really?
In different directions. Yeah, we're all in Dallas.
Yeah, nice. So anyway, I mean, long story short, a friend of mine went to work for Aerotech. Got in there. It was just the way that I'm kind of a systems thinker, and I sort of figured out the system. I think, it's a numbers game, and you have to figure out where quality meets quantity, and you have to get creative to keep both of those buckets going. And, there's a lot of people that get into recruiting that work for staffing agencies that get out of it. And after a year, and they go do something else, right? But yeah, it was always something that was not super difficult. I haven't loved every minute of it, I mean, I don't know if anybody can say that, but it was. I like to help people get jobs. I like to make that. I like the candidate experience piece of it, and I would say like, I like to teach people how to be more efficient. And I think that's what I've kind of gravitated towards, is less of the candidate interaction and sourcing and hands-on sort of recruiting, and more of the like systems and brand and efficiency and reach and all of that. So yeah, I don't know, the catalyst for it. I started a network of local job boards in 2001 and kind of taught myself SEO and automation and retargeting and, all of that, little PHP, little MySQL. That was kind of between my Microsoft stints. And then when I went back to Microsoft, I focused more on that, like the high volume, the marketing piece, without sacrificing candidate experience. I think that's kind of the art of this. Like, anyone could go spam all of LinkedIn Recruiter right now, but how do you do it without pissing people off, and with when people reply to you, making sure that like they get what they want out of the interaction. That's right. That's, I feel like, something I've been able to, I'm not perfect at it, right? But that's kind of always been my focus.
So right now, and let's just piggyback off of that. I tend to look at HR and recruiting in the 3 Ps: people, process, and product. People being kind of how you collaborate, how do you kind of get things done as a team. Product, all that technology stack, whether or not it's in recruiting and talent acquisition specifically, or across HR, and process, or micro processes. Where you are right now, what interests you the most right now between those 3 Ps, and why?
I'm just writing these down. So Process, probably. That's usually what I gravitate towards. I like to talk through those things. A lot of the meetings I have are about how do we optimize our referral program? How do we fold new initiatives into our existing outbound marketing programs? How do we fold the TA needs into corporate brand initiatives? How do we layer DEI into all of that? So process is where I gravitate towards. Products, I usually lean on Andrew for that. He's kind of the guy that keeps me posted on the latest and greatest.
Do you just follow up on the process real quick?
Yeah.
Do you look at processes like take again, any of those that you just have? Do you look at like those as micro processes? Like, do you take a big process and then bake it like with all the little things underneath it? Do y'all think like that, or do you think like that? Because I don't know. It's probably a year ago. I started looking at the candidate experience and looking at micro experiences. It's like little tiny things that you could do to dazzle a candidate. Like you find out that they're into, drone racing. When you send them the offer, you send them a drone, or something like that. Like, how do you make that? How do you do that? Especially at volume, how do you do that? So I started thinking about microprocesses, but I'm not sure people like yourself think of it like that. So
no, you're right. I mean, I'm not the best. I'm more of like a big picture guy. But I think that's where people ties into process. Right. Is I'm really lucky at Splunk because we take candidate experience seriously, but there are a few people, and these are recruiters, these are coordinators, these are sourcers, these are HRBPs who have kind of come together and started thinking of those things like with that layer of granularity.
Right.
And then for me, it's about sort of like, how do I make that happen? How can I accommodate that? How can I be a conduit to that actually hitting the market? I think you need to crowdsource things like that, right? I mean, every candidate's got a different perspective, so you need multiple perspectives to look at it from all those different angles to think of what's gonna resonate with them. And but yeah, I need to get better at that. I'm, like I said, I'm more of a systems guy. Like, how do we make this incredibly efficient? And then I usually kind of lean on the team to plug those touch points in. But lucky to be at a place where that's kind of, common. Yeah.
Jubal, you're so humble. So I just want to go back to something you said earlier. And I happen to know this because, to your point, I spend a lot of time swimming in this pool. And most all of the employers or the companies with whom I work, ideally they have, particularly the more successful ones, they have a Jubal. And specifically what I mean is someone not unlike you that's a black belt in these different systems, that's creative, that's resourceful, that really understands the full cycle process of how best to your earlier comment, be it active or passive, how to engage these people, how to find them, how to connect with them, and then how to catch them. And when you described your career journey, you're so. My first point is you're very good at it, and that's not a coincidence, and I think it's by design. It's particularly as I heard your narrative. I mean, the three things I say to someone if they're going to be looking for a job, or if they're talking about the job or what they want to do, and they say, well, I don't know you know what, everybody knows what they want to do. They may not be able to articulate it, but if they really sit with themselves and get quiet and meditate for 5 minutes before they do it, they do know. But I say, are you good at it? Do you enjoy it? Can you get paid? And so how do you, and I know I'm kind of repeating the question, but I really want the listeners or the viewers to understand the value and benefit of what you do is, and how important it is to an employer that is trying to be successful in a job market, whether it's COVID or whether everyone's looking for the same people. Um, maybe I'm answering my question for you. I just think it's amazing what you do. I think you're being incredibly humble and modest about it, and that's great. But maybe I'll say it a different way. Knowing everything you know and everything you've been through, whether it's Microsoft or Splunk or just the whole journey, the whole workday. I mean, these are big companies that are doing a lot of heavy lifting and making a lot of headway and inroads in the trajectory of the evolution of hiring or recruiting. But knowing everything you know, what are some of the key takeaways? Like, what was there anything you wouldn't do that you did, or anything you wish you'd done better? Anything that kind of comes to you like, wow, I wish I'd done this, or I wish I'd said that, or I wish I hadn't done that, or I wish I had said this.
You want
Regrets. There's regrets.
you want me
What are
to
the
give
regrets?
No,
you
I'm not
give you a
looking.
list of everything I
No,
wish I never said?
no,
How long is this?
I'm,
let's let's start with today.
Yeah, what Zoom plan do
no,
you have?
but
Is
you
this
know
going
what
to
I
cut us
mean.
off at 40 minutes? Because it's a
You're
long list.
we don't have a ton of time left, and I want to get some of these nuggets of gold that I know you're holding on to. But I think that I happen to believe that you have done some amazing things. Necessity is the mother of invention, but I happen to know for a fact that you're one of these people that doesn't. You could fall out of bed tomorrow, and 10 other companies would want to engage you for the intellectual property that's rattling around in your head about how this stuff works. So looking back, anything kind of go, God, it was really amazing when this happened, or this should have happened and it didn't, or I thought this was going to happen. Just and again, not looking for dirty laundry, just observations. I mean, not a lot of people have been doing what you do for this long that can speak on so many different levels, and so many different verticals.
Yeah. Yeah, man. I mean, honestly, like I've been pretty lucky. I think, the time when I got into the game, 99, everything was ramping up. I was in Seattle, which historically, and continues to have uh, quite a demand for talent, especially in tech. Um, I knew, I got I didn't know what recruiting was, and a friend of mine said, you should try this out. You might be good at it. Um, and then I moved to Portland. My wife's from Portland, so that's why I'm down here, and met other people in Portland. I mean, a lot of it's just like been kind of luck, right? And just luckily falling into this thing that my brain agrees with. But in terms of like, like mileposts along my career. I think, I think one thing I did that was different is in like 2001 ish, I got into like Yahoo groups and things like that, and started to just like blast content out, right? Like I wanted everybody to know like who I was. Like I'm not really a wallflower. You know what I mean? I mean, I'm not always the life of the party, but online, like I have no problem sending 2,000 in mails versus 5, right? I mean, I think that's what,
Wow.
yeah, and again, like you've got to be able to back it up. You've got to be able to reply and make sure you don't sacrifice the candidate experience. But getting into that and then kind of like thinking about how could I turn this into my own platform? I'm doing all of this. Why don't I host this myself? So that's when I started the Job Board Network, right? So, and then learned SEO and automation and autoresponders and things like that, and then got back into recruiting. I think that's kind of the zig and the zag that most people don't have, right? I mean, Andrew, you know that, you've done this, and William, I mean, you know it inside and out like anybody. I mean, a lot of people, when they go to that kind of platform or service model, they don't come back. But I think there's a huge application for that model. Like Splunk's career site is my job board. Like that's how I look at it, right? How can I bundle this content in the most relevant place and put it in front of the most relevant people? So I'd say, I mean, that's probably the biggest like kind of catalyst in my life for sort of going down this path that I did. That's a little bit unique. And there's a lot of people that think like that. I mean, every day I'm working with people that have great ideas and, you know, getting hit up by people that want to do this stuff. Like they get it. And my advice is just like, do it. Don't be afraid of, you know, you pay for your LinkedIn license. Like you should be sending emails to everybody that you can. Don't be shy, right? All they can do is say no or not reply. And if they do reply, make sure that they have a positive experience, but you know, don't like let it.
You say it so easily and
Is that crazy? Does not.
well, no, it's look, dude, it makes perfect sense to me. I'm never not amazed though. Like I have kids that have just graduated from college and I kind of, you know, because to your point, I help employers figure out how to hire the best people or the right people. Then if you invert that, it stands to reason that I help people find the right jobs. And so I'll be talking to someone and the biggest shortcoming or fallback or challenge is they don't know how to advocate for themselves. They don't. And I say, hey, listen, being good at getting a job is not something you want to be good at, right? It's like being good at dating. You just want a girlfriend. You don't want to be, and you just want a job. So if you're good at getting a job, then it means you've had a lot of jobs, which is not in and of itself a good thing.
I feel like I've probably combined on this Zoom probably for 30 minutes said what you said in 2 words, which is advocate for yourself. That's it. Whether you're a job seeker or a recruiter, like if you have something good to offer, like advocate for yourself until somebody tells you to stop. Really?
Well, there's actually been a 100 nuggets in what you said.
Yeah, seriously.
I have 2 questions. One of, but they'll be relatively quick. One of them is about axioms. I have 2 axioms that I kind of live by. One is do right and fear no man, and the second is do first what you dread most. And I live by those. Right? Do you happen to have something tattooed on your arm or something that you live by or think about often as it relates to kind of how you live your life?
Yeah, we're getting deep now. I think I'm the one person in Portland with no tattoos, so it's not, you know,
nice.
official, but
Amen, brother.
Yet.
Yeah, I can tell you what I tell my kids a lot. My kids are 15 and 12, great kids, hard workers. But you know, the old Yoda quote, do or do not, there is no try. Like, you know, either do it or don't do it, but don't do it half-assed.
I love that.
Yeah.
I love that. Andrew, if you don't have a question, I have another one that's really quick.
Go. I have one more, but go, William.
So favorite interview bit, question, or thing that you like to do. So take us again at any point in your career. Is there something that you just love to do in an interview? And if so, what is that?
Yeah, I mean, I keep it pretty simple. I mean, usually what I look for is like introspection, right? I think that people that are self-aware, maybe it's because I'm somewhat, you know, self-aware, imposter complex, you know, all that, like what's it called, imposter syndrome.
Imposter syndrome, yeah.
Yeah, but I'm always curious about how do you think other people view you? And so one of the questions I always ask is like, you know, how would people describe you in 2 or 3 words?
Oh, that's cool.
Wow.
That's a good one.
That is a good one.
I don't know. I actually posted this on LinkedIn a few weeks ago. We were interviewing somebody for a sourcer role, and I asked that question, and she thought about it for a second, and she said, aggressively chill.
Wow, that's a good answer.
And I was just like,
yes,
that's and you know, Andrew knows the Splunk culture, and aggressively chill is it. Everyone is cool, but everybody like gets their,
Yeah.
gets stuff done and innovates constantly. And we're big for our t-shirts, and I'm just like, we got to get that on t-shirt. Aggressively chill. So
That's genius.
I don't know. What about you guys? I mean, what do you guys ask? That's a great question. I mean, I'd love to know kind of what your like go-to.
My go-to that I've asked probably for 25 years, same question in every interview, is everyone's misunderstood. I'm misunderstood. You're misunderstood. How are you misunderstood? Tell me how you're misunderstood.
That's good.
And to your point, all I'm really trying to do is see how they think. What's the mouse doing inside the hamster wheel or whatever? Like what's going on? There's no right or answer, and I don't even really care about the answer, quite frankly. I just want to understand how they think. So that's mine. Andrew has, I'm sure he has.
I love that. I love that. That's great. Yeah.
So my standard one when I'm interviewing someone is, and it's not really sexy, is what motivates you. Because I really want to know that. And
that's good.
And then I think some people are afraid to say money or whatever,
Right.
but whatever it is, and then, but I want to, like, your guys those are better. Like, what's your favorite superhero and why, or something? I mean, something, it's funny. Well, that's one of the questions, Jubal, is, what's your out question, and everyone has a different one. And so yours was good. And I just want to say this, because the answer you gave about advocating for yourself and being, not being afraid. It's one thing if I say it or a career coach says it, but when the guy on the inside's telling you, hey, put yourself out there. Like, what are your, I mean, and we're out, I'm not going to overstate the obvious, but it's fear of rejection, right? I'm not, but gosh, you said, it's who producer Bev always says it's who knows you. She gets that. She doesn't say that. But that's why it's so important. And this is kind of the purpose of the show, Jubal, is to give people, I don't think people realize that there's a Jubal on the other end of the thing. They 100%. Think it's some guy that's going to go, oh, no, oh, what, this, oh, forget that. Like, no, they probably didn't even see it. So why not? What do you have? So I don't need this. Doesn't need to be a Tony Robbins seminar. Okay, we're running out of time. We only got a few minutes left. I don't know that we did a thorough job on, okay, Jubal, you could give one, well, we're two more questions, and one's kind of a fun one, so we'll save that one for last. But one is, okay, you can impart one piece of wisdom or feedback for someone that's challenged in their career search or their job change, and you have this opportunity to, my girlfriend always says, ask the waiter, okay, I could only order one thing off your menu, what would it be? So this is kind of that, or a take on that. If you could give one piece of guidance or feedback to someone that was challenged, like I said, and what would that be?
And you can't say advocate for yourself.
Yeah, we already did that.
Yeah, you already covered that.
We've already used that 3 times.
You say you can't do that.
We don't have
to go back to the hole. You already did that one.
Yeah.
I would say 2 things. I would say, number 1, do what you really want to do. Don't feel like there's any sort of like social, what's the word? I want to say constraint, but that's not it. But constrict.
Conformity.
Yeah. Like, if you don't want to go and like be a consultant for, KPMG or whatever, like if you're sick of spreadsheets and you don't want to do that, then like, don't do it. Like, enjoy your life. Go start a food truck in Costa Rica and do that. Figure out how to make it work. Like, number 1 is that, right?
Yeah, that's good. 100%. I'm tracking.
Number 2 is, if you do have kind of a career path and there is something you want to do and you like what you do and you want to work in whatever field you're in, or a different field. Be purposeful about how you approach it, which is kind of what we talked about kind of throughout this. But like, data don't lie. Use data. Like look on Indeed and think of how many jobs are out there. And then maybe like look at your LinkedIn network and think about how many people in your network that might be competing for those jobs. And that'll give you that kind of sense of urgency about like, what's the talent pool really like, right? If you're in Portland and you're looking for a graphic design role and there's 3 roles out there and 500 graphic designers, like you might have to get creative. You might have to consult. You might have to like hang your own shingle. You might have to, do something else. You might have to be the graphic designer for a paint company for a while until the hot agency starts to hire again, I guess. But look at the numbers, look at the trends, look at what people are talking about on Facebook and LinkedIn groups and what the trends are and things like that. But yeah, I would say, yeah, do what you want to do, because life will pass you by quick and you might not have the chance to do it later on. And try to use data as much as you can and be purposeful with it.
Those are great answers. It's a little bit of Samuel Clemens, that pick a job that you like and you'll never work a day in your life. And the other thing you kind of said without really saying it is, hey, if you want to be a graphic designer and you're not, just go be a graphic designer and just do it. Maybe you're not going to make any money at it at first, but just go do it. Like you can't think your way into right action, but you can act your way into right thinking or success in this case. So that's good feedback, Jubal. Thank you.
It's a tough question, man, because I mean, the reality is that, where we're at currently, like,
Yeah.
Who knows what's going on? You know what I mean?
Sure.
Like we could give every tip in the world and that doesn't mean that you're going to, get a job tomorrow, unfortunately. So
There's still an element of luck that's involved.
Element of luck, element of who element of maybe you have to shift gears and come back to what you really want to do in a few years. I mean, we've all been lucky and, but even for, folks that are kind of established in the game that have been doing a while, you never know. I mean, we might be, doing something else in 2 years or whatever. So I think it's like change is inevitable and do what you got to do, but try to do what you love, I guess.
I would add to that. You keep saying how lucky you are. I think the harder, the producer Bev always says this, the harder I try, the luckier I get. And so I think there's some real truth to that. Yeah. And then before I ask my zinger question, it's not a zinger, but it's a fun one. And it's one that we kind of want to use as the teaser clip for the thumbnail on YouTube.
Can't wait.
Producer Bev, do you have any questions for Jubal? You've been awfully quiet.
Well, what I wonder about is you're doing all these things to improve candidate experience. How do you find out what things are ruining the candidate experience? Because you're not candidate facing, right? You're behind the scenes now.
Yeah. So it's usually like surveys, Glassdoor, things like that. Surveys from people who were hired and weren't hired, blind, things like that. Yeah, not to like incredibly scientific about it yet, but it's like a huge focus for us. So I was actually on the talent acquisition team at Splunk for the last 3 years, and I just moved over to the employee experience team. Because our employer brand, has a big focus on that candidate experience piece. So more to come. We'll talk about that next time somebody cancels on you and you have me on.
Excellent. Okay, maybe before that. Okay.
Yeah, I think this is going to be a good one. It already is a good one. Okay, so here's the kind of the fun question. HR is kind of an interesting space. And one of the things we always ask the guests is, what is the most unusual, it doesn't need to be creepy or weird, but just like, wow, I can't believe this happened. HR story. I mean, and to give you frame of reference, one guy came to an interview with his mom and, had his mom answer the questions. And I mean, there's other ones. So nothing's off the table, and I could have asked you earlier, so you could have thought of a really cool one. And if you don't have one, trust me, we could cobble a couple together between the four of us. Anything come to mind that you were just like, wow, I can't believe that happened?
Yeah, while you're thinking about it, one I gave last time is an interview, a candidate that essentially through a process fell off her chair and bloodied her nose. Right. And I froze. Like the fail wasn't necessarily but the fail is I didn't know what to do. Like I literally froze in the moment because I didn't know, like, do I rescue? Do I get somebody? Like I just froze. I completely failed the test. But that was one of those horror stories isn't the right thing. It's memorable. And probably for me, it's memorable in a negative way because I should have been a bit more empathetic, and I wasn't. But so that's one I've used in the past, and I've got several, but that's one of them.
I can tell you one where I was the one that did something, where I was the one that they're probably talking about now.
Go, big man.
Oh yeah.
And this kind of ties into the like choose a different course sometimes, right? So I was working for a boutique staffing agency in Portland, focused on graphic design and things like that. And my wife actually was in sales for a pharmaceutical company, and they were hiring. And I thought, you know what, like that's a pretty good gig. I'm gonna interview. I think I was at some sort of company event or something like that, and met them. And they're like, you ever think about coming to work here? I'm not going to say the company, but so I said, yeah, I'll check it out. So I showed up, interviewed. It was me and kind of like the regional manager, not her manager, but another one, and two salespeople in like a hotel suite in Portland. It's not that bad, but it's kind of bad. But I can't believe I'm going to say this, but so anyway, like interview went fine. Like I wasn't their guy. I mean, I wasn't really getting the vibe or whatever. Shook everybody's hand at the end, said, thanks, let's keep in touch. We'll see you around. And as I'm walking out, I don't know if it was my resume or some other piece of paper he was holding. He kind of dropped it, and I bent over to pick it up for him, and the back of my pants just like split with everyone behind me. And I was like, okay then, and walked out and never talked to him again.
Oh, dude, that's great.
Genius. So, check. Done.
I think
that's how I roll.
Okay, well, so Jubal, this has been great, and I could go on and on clearly. So, but just so if people want to get in touch with you or reach out to you, how can they find you?
I think, just Google, Jubal Ince, and you're going to kind of see all my stuff. I would say, like, honestly, like the questions you asked about how did I come up and what happened and how to get to where I am. I mean, having a weird, unique name does pay dividends. I mean, Tincup, everybody knows that name, Andrew Gardiner, everybody knows you from reputation and working hard, but Jubal Ince, like there's only one of me. So, but yeah, Jubal Ince, linkedin.com/in/Jubal, jince@splunk.com. But yeah, hit me up. Always happy to talk about recruiting, talent brand, job search. Yeah.
Beautiful. You're a prince of a man. I really want to thank you for 100%. Coming on such short notice and doing such a great job. You're a good man. Super grateful. Thanks, Jubal.
Yeah, no, I appreciate spending the time with you guys. I like the way that your minds work, and I love talking about this stuff, and would love to keep in touch and talk more.
Oh, we will. We'll have a V2 and probably a V3. And if you're a viewer or a listener or a subscriber and you want more content, or there's questions you have or ideas for other guests, please feel free to dip in your oar. Thanks again, everybody. Keep up the good work. We got to come up with like a signature closing line. Angels take them and fly because they take themselves lightly or something like that. But we'll come back to that. Okay, everybody. Thank you. Thanks, Jubal.
Hey, thanks, y'all. Talk to you soon.
Peace.
Bye.
Thanks for watching this episode of Career Keynotes. For more killer content, please like and subscribe to our channel. We welcome all comments and questions and are grateful for any input regarding future content, topics, and guests. We look forward to seeing you on the next episode.